Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of GodSaw's Turnbuckly, the wrestling video podcast I run over here on youtube.com/GodSaw. And I'm going to start off this week on a very somber way. I'm not going to speak too long about it because I'm not one that really covers or watches this particular promotion, but it was definitely a sad thing that happened this past week. I believe it was on Wednesday. The ICW, the Insane Championship Wrestling promotion from the UK area. They're based primarily in the United Kingdom, Ireland. I think they go to Scotland a little bit as well. But their world champion, Adrian Lionheart McCullum, I hope I pronounced that name properly, passed away this week. So it's, like I said, I'm not going to speak too much on this one because I've never seen any of his work and I haven't really watched ICW or anything. But when it comes towards wrestlers passing away and everything to go along with it, it's a very sad moment whenever somebody who's not active or active passes away. So I'm obviously not familiar with his work, but a lot of places that have been reporting on this, or people who have at least been able to have met him in some way, have been speaking very kindly on him, which has always been a very good thing on that. ICW themselves did open up a fundraiser for the funeral, which I believe they are still taking donations to this at this time, and I believe they have at least met their goal on there. And overall, like I said, very sad moment. Sad way to really start off the show this week, but I didn't want to start it with anything too upbeat or anything to go along with that, because even though I've never really seen his work or anything, whenever you hear of wrestlers passing away, active or deactive at the time, retired wrestlers, it's always a sad moment with that. So very sad to hear about that. Obviously, everybody in the wrestling, everybody who watches wrestling or does podcasts or about wrestling, hearts, prayers, everything going out to his family and everything and loved ones. And it's definitely a tough time. It's always a tough time when something like that happens. So I did want to at least make mention to that, even though I'm not one that has watched ICW or anything, but I wanted to at least mention it in some way, shape, or form because it is a tragic and sad moment. Now, obviously having to try to cut away from that area. Going through this week on the show, we are going to go through Raw and SmackDown this week, which I thought were pretty good shows. I am also going to add in my predictions for the Stomping Grounds pay-per-view. I'm going to try to do this a little bit differently. Usually I do the prediction show as a separate thing, and then and I don't normally add it into the week's thing. I'm going to do it a little bit differently this time because I didn't record it earlier in the week. I do have Stomping Ground simulations on the YouTube channel at this time, and those will be up for viewing, where I use 2K19 to simulate the Stomping Grounds matches with that one as well. So that is going to be up on the channel. Obviously, we're going to be going through Raw and SmackDown, as made mentioned before. I did not get a chance to get to NXT this week by the time of this recording, but I do plan on watching it so I can at least keep up with the story. So we won't necessarily go over it this week, but I'm hoping to put it back into the show for next week. But I will also be going over a little bit of Impact Wrestling, and what I will go off and say is maybe not the most disturbing, but one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen in wrestling, ever. And that's saying a lot considering some of the stuff I've watched. Katie Vick. Oh boy. Every time I mention to that one, that's still the worst thing. That's still probably the worst thing I've ever seen. But this is going to be up there with what happened on Impact this week. And I don't think you think I don't think you're thinking of what it was if you did watch. At least for people who necessarily know me on that one. But let's go through Raw. Raw this week I thought was actually a fairly good show, a fairly entertaining show on that one. It felt different. It felt like it had a different vibe and an energy to it this week. It felt like certain things were shot differently, and you got almost a little cinematic feel in certain areas to go along with it, with some of the stuff that they were doing. And honestly, I felt like the show came off really good in the end, and also to the point of like baby faces kind of having that little bit of edge to them, if not borderline them just being complete jerks to a certain degree on that one. And we'll be making mention mostly to Seth Rollins on this. Seth Rollins was in full like nope, not taking any crap from anybody, and whomever's siding with Baron Corbin this week is going to get something for it. The show starts off with Elias being in the ring. He was cutting a promo about how Baron Corbin was selecting him as the special guest referee. Well, apparently that was not going to be the case, because Seth Rollins immediately comes up from behind and beats him down with a steel chair. And this was the theme of the night. And it was theme of someone's thinking about it or is going to accept being the referee for the match on Sunday, but Seth Rollins was going to beat them down with a steel chair. And also kind of it wasn't as heavy of a theme, but it was kind of a theme of SmackDown as well. So it started off with that. Rollins basically warns everybody who thinks about being on Baron Corbin's side that the chair was waiting for him. Like I said, this was a theme throughout the night, because later in the night you had Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn having Baron Corbin for the Kevin and Sami show. They withdraw for being referee, first of all, after what they saw Seth Rollins do to Elias, and apparently he withdrawed as well. This was kind of the little bit of missing pieces, is like, well, I guess back to the drawing board when they get beaten down immediately. Like, there was no verbal saying, hey, I'm not going to do it type thing. Baron Corbin in this case announces EC3 as the referee, as EC3 is going out there and he's trying to do the whole aspect that, yeah, I can count the 1, 2, 3, and Rollins comes out and just destroys him with the chair. And basically Baron looks at him and is like, well, back to the drawing board on that one. And this also led to a very funny bit with the New Day coming out. You had, which they're basically they came out after Seth Rollins had done this, so EC3 is just laid out. And when it came down to everything, they were cutting a promo. I liked how Sammy made mention, it's like, dude, I saw the list of wild cards. You weren't on it. What are you guys doing here? Kofi's just like, WWE champion. I'll do what I want. I do what I want whenever I want. And of course, the New Day is going to be here with me. So I guess that's the aspect behind the wild card rule. So they're not doling out the quote unquote suspensions or fines for breaking the wild card rule. They're just kind of, if it's not too bad, we'll just go with it. Type thing. I guess that's where they're going with a wild card rule on this one. Fair enough, I guess. Nah, it's kind of, I'm not the biggest fan of the wild card rule either. Don't worry about it. But I'm trying to actually give it a little bit of logic of what they're trying to do. But what am I even trying to do that with logic? I don't know. I have no idea on that one. But they do a funny bit where they want to have a 6-man tag team match. And they're going like, I wonder if there's a referee that can sanction this match. And they take the limp. They take the limp body of EC3 and it's like, EC3, would you sanction this match? And they just shake him kind of violently, and he's bobbing his head to go along with it, which makes it a little bit funnier on that side. To say yes, and then of course Kofi kind of makes noise or makes a weird sound or not a weird sound, but kind of tries to mimic the voice, of course poorly, of EC3. It's like, I'll sign off on this match, and then they just drop him and they have the match with that one. which led to the match between them, which was, I believe, next. Yes, it was. It was. This was later in the show. With that, I'm kind of trying a new format where we go through things a little bit differently, but try to still get to everything as well. Which led to that match with the New Day going up against Baron Corbin, Sami Zayn, and Kevin Owens, which was made 2 out of 3 falls for some odd reason. The first fall was taken pretty early by, I think, Sami Zayn getting rolled up by Xavier Woods, and then Owen, and then the second fall, which I thought this was at least a pretty decent match in the terms of the in-ring action, but the second fall ends with Kofi getting the pin over Baron Corbin after Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens leave when Corbin accidentally hits Sami. Like I said, I thought it was a pretty decent match, everything to go along with it. But back onto the whole thing about the special guest referee to go along with this. So you do have Paul Heyman cut a promo about being the special guest referee. He's like, no, I'm not going to do it. Brock's not going to do it. He even goes as far as saying someone would have to be a dumbass to take this spot right now in this particular match. And so we don't get anything at the end of the night, because the last thing that we see from this is that Baron Corbin was talking with Eric Young. As Eric Young walks away, and after he's told Corbin, is like, I'll think about it. He walks up down the hallway, and he runs into Seth Rollins. Rollins was like, kind of whatever, and then Eric Young is like, I told him I'd think about it. I'm going to tell him no, don't worry about it. And this is where Seth Rollins was, he was kind of this with Elias as well, but kind of entered into, I'm going to be a jerk right now. It's like, don't worry about it. It's like, me and you go a long way back and everything. Don't worry about it. Seth Rollins walks away, but Eric Young turns his back, and Seth, not having it, beats him down with a chair. That was the last little bit of that throughout the night. I thought some of these segments were pretty good. To go along with it, inside of there, it was a running story throughout the night, and a little bit through SmackDown as well. They did start the show off, because like that first segment with Elias and Rollins lasted all of like a few minutes, and they went into a match immediately. It was going to be a fatal five-way to figure out who's going to face Samoa Joe for the United States title. The one little bit that they added into this, and I kind of liked what they did here, because Elias was continually trying to get up. Miz comes out, hits skull crushing finale. Bobby Lashley comes out, hits a spear. You have Cesaro do the swing to Elias. Ricochet hits him with a code breaker, and then Braun Strowman destroys him or finishes him off with the running power slam. So everybody gave a little bit of a punishment to Elias to go along with this. This was a very fast-paced match for the beginning of it. Especially for the first 3 eliminations. It was just very fast-paced, and they got to the action really quickly, and everybody kind of looked good in some way, shape, or form, even though eliminations were happening rather quickly. They started off the match, like I said, extremely quick. Everybody going through not necessarily through their moves, but just being very fast-paced and action-packed through it. Cesaro ends up getting eliminated first, but not before he did a torture rack slam. That torture rack slam he does to Braun Strowman. So he got to show off a power spot. And this eventually led to him getting beat, where he gets hit with a running power slam, but Lashley was going to stop Strowman. But Lashley ends up getting running power slammed onto Cesaro. He pins Cesaro, and then eventually he would get Lashley as well. They don't leave the ring area. It looked like the same thing was going to happen to Ricochet. So Strowman is looking very dominant through this. It looks like the same thing is going to happen to Ricochet, but Lashley and Cesaro come in and beat down Strowman and allow Ricochet to hit the 630, and they all pin to make sure he stays down, and Strowman is eliminated. Like I said, this all happens in very quick succession, not like extremely quick within like a minute or anything, but decently quick succession. Eventually it does get slowed down a little bit for the aspect of Ricochet for Ricochet and Miz to have a relatively good like one-on-one match to go along with this. Also, Strowman does destroy, like tosses Ricochet over the top rope into Lashley, and then throws Lashley in the barricade, and then chases Cesaro up the rampway and launches him into the LED board. It was. Like I said, it was very fast paced, and like you got a sense of destruction out of this, which is a good thing. Which is a good thing on that one, based off of like Strowman and everything to go along with it. And then Miz and Ricochet end up having a relatively good match, one-on-one side, which eventually led to Ricochet picking up the victory with a 630 on the Miz. After the match, Samoa Joe tries to gain the advantage but misses, or basically tries to gain the advantage, but Ricochet turns the tide and tosses him from the ring. Overall, I thought it was a pretty good match with this one. You also have Becky Lynch coming out to cut a promo on Lacey Evans. She cuts a quick promo on Lacey Evans, and calls her out. Lacey Evans comes out, and they finally make mention to the factor that Lacey Evans was a former Marine in this one. I guess to give it a little bit more of era of toughness for Lacey Evans on that one, where I think a lot of people feel like she's just kind of a soft character, which is not necessarily the case. That kind of adds that little air of dimension to it. It's always interesting to see a heel character, spout off something that they did that's kind of noble in its own right. But I think Becky also had a good response, saying it's like, I respect what you've done in the past, but I don't like where you are right now, type of response to it. Lacey tries to get into the ring. Becky gives her a Bexploder and stands tall in this one. You have the Revival, and this was an interesting little theme here through the night. So they kind of painted a little bit of a picture for you to kind of see where things were going, and it actually paid off in the end as well. So they cut to this crowd shot, and then you get them kind of the camera walking forward and walking forward towards the back area, and you see the Revival just cut past the camera, and they're going to Shane's VIP lounge, where they are going to start, where he and Drew McIntyre are there, and they're going to start having a little VIP party. They have lobster and steak and everything with that, a little bit of extra food and everything to go along with that as well. So that was kind of the start of that, and it continued throughout the night. The first bit that was that you have them backstage talking, and you have Shane McMahon you had the party get interrupted by Heath Slater. He came in, he was asking for a raise. The one interesting little bit was that they had a little bit of an audio issue, but so Michael Cole was trying to cover for it as the audio was coming back in. So Heath comes in, he basically was asking for a raise. Kids are getting very expensive, wanted to see if he could get a little bit of a raise to get a little bit more money to cover for that. Shane says no, but he goes off and says, it's like, hey man, that, it takes a lot to walk in here and say something like say anything like that. So you walked in here like a man, leave like a man as well. But gives that look to Drew McIntyre to say, go take care of this. And I think he even says that to a certain degree. So they cut to back out of the VIP lounge, and Drew walks up to Heath, and he's being all kind of calm and somber, and basically playing off of their history. Is like, dude, I know you have a lot of history. I don't like seeing you like this. He wanted to give him some money, but Heath was turning it down. Drew drops the money. Heath wants to help him pick it up, but Drew beats him down, just making him look like the biggest a-hole he possibly can in this case, beating down Heath Slater in the area, and eventually Shane and the Revival come in and break him up and pull him back in, just kind of like have to drag him in to make him almost feel like a psychopath. But the little funny bit in there was that the Revival was picking up Drew's money, but then they would like slip, like one of them would slip the stuff into, or a little bit of the money into their own pockets as they're getting back into the VIP lounge. It was a funny little bit there. I'll get into more of that a little bit later because that was kind of the setup of where they were going down the line. Guess who they found this week? The Viking Raiders. I mean, Viking Experience. I mean, oh, screw it. It's War Machine. It's War Machine. The Viking Raiders were basically found. They did beat up some local jobbers this week, so they had a jobber match. And right afterwards, they cut to the crowd where you just have like everybody in the front row doing like boo, not happy, and then they cut to these two people that are, or they go right past them originally. I like how they shot this. They cut right past them originally, but you have somebody like a like old timey Revolutionary War style style uniform, and then Charlie Chapman to a certain degree disguises, ends out being R-Truth and Carmella. So they go past them and it's like, wait a minute, they found R-Truth, and then the 24/7 stuff ensues there. They R-Truth runs under the ring. They pull out Titus O'Neil on the other side, and then R-Truth escapes from the other side. They didn't really do much with the 24/7 this week on Raw. They did a little bit more with it on SmackDown. But overall, a little fun segment there. Daniel Bryan comes out. He cuts a promo on LA, and they also get a little bit of a stare down with the Viking Raiders as well, with Rowan and Daniel Bryan. They cut a promo on both the match with Seth Rollins tonight and LA. That was also a theme of the night, was bashing LA. I think Elias did it too, with some Anthony Davis stuff from the Lakers. A lot of it was Lakers bashing on that one, which, you know, cheap heat, whatever. You also had AJ Styles in the trainer's room, so basically it looks like they're playing off of a thing to making them come back. But also Gallows and Anderson come in, and they are going to be in their doctor's outfits, kind of just playing around. Styles is not too happy with them, basically saying that they've gotten soft and gotten too comfortable. When was the last time you won a match? And it kind of set a fire to the to Gallows and Anderson. It's like, well, watch us beat the Usos tonight, which they had a match with the Usos, and it was a decent match, short match. Gallows and Anderson basically dominate the beginning portions of it. They get a little too overconfident and start taunting a little too much, which allows for the Usos to pin Gallows. AJ's not happy backstage on that one. You had a segment with backstage with Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss. So Alexa Bliss had a present for Nikki Cross, and it was a shot at the women's tag team titles where she was teaming up with Alexa on that one. And she also makes mention to a little bit more drama with doing like a little bit more bashing of Bayley's character and everything to go along with that, to set up a little bit more drama, which they had a segment before the tag team title match where Bayley was with Naomi and Natalia. I think it was Charlie Caruso came up and it's like, Bayley, what's your response to this stuff that showed up on social media about you not taking a picture with a fan because she was wearing a Nikki Cross shirt? And they played it off as she plays it off as oh, this has Alexa's writing all over it, I'm gonna go shut her up type thing, where she doesn't necessarily deny it. She denies it the next night, and they play it off as like Naomi was like, I wonder if she wouldn't take a picture with somebody. Who knows? The who knows type moment. This led to the match with the Iconics going up against Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. This was a short but decent match. The Iconics do pick up the victory. So one of the Iconics knocks off Alexa Bliss, and she starts, or off the ring apron. She starts, her and Bayley start jaw jacking. She shoves Bayley, who falls down to the ground. And in the ring, they're still having the portion of the match. Nikki gets caught with a roll up, and Bayley kind of stops Alexa but shoves her as well. from saving Nikki, and that's what gives the Iconics the victory. So they're playing this off as almost like, it kind of is interesting whether or not they're playing off as Alexa's being manipulative, or is Bayley going to be or are we going to find it out that maybe Alexa was right the entire time type thing, and maybe Bayley's the one that turns heel. I don't think they're actually, based off of the story that they're going with, and with what they did on Tuesday as well, I don't think that's the route that they're going, but who knows where they're actually going with it. And the stuff that they're coming up with is actually kind of decent between the two of them this time. And the stuff that they did on SmackDown was really good on that one as well. Up next was Firefly Funhouse, and oh, these do not disappoint. This felt like it was definitely the finale of Firefly Funhouse, and it definitely made it feel like that Bray is going to show up in the arena here very soon. But this was one of those moments that you could feel like we're trying to be kid friendly and everything, but there's the demonic side, and it's coming out more and more and more, even to the point that they had the anarchy symbol as one of the transitions in there, and apparently, this is, I think, the indication. Is this the indication that he's a heel or just whatever? But apparently, one of the lines they did use, and I think this is a playback to WrestleMania 33. It's like, some idea. It's like ideas are like ideas from your brain. All they need is a little bit of water, and they can grow and fester and everything on that area. But some ideas have worms, and that's no good, playing off of the bit. And then they splatted up the worms on there, kind of like they did with the WrestleMania 33 thing. And he also makes mention to, like, maybe the dinosaurs still exist. Do your parents really know that the world is round and everything to go along with that? So they're almost playing it off as like, is Bray a flat earther? What's who knows? Who knows on that one? And then it goes into the demonic area where all the puppets are saying, "Join us, join us." And then the last bit is the Fiend saying, "Let me in." And then he quantum leaps out of there, and I feel like it has to be the setup for them having Bray show back up on TV, whether it be at the pay-per-view or at Monday Night Raw. Or I guess SmackDown. I guess he could show up at SmackDown as well, because they do get the replays of the Firefly Funhouse over there as well. So I wanted to keep that a little bit with the Shane McMahon stuff with the VIP lounge, because up next to talk about was Roman Reigns coming out. He cuts a promo calling out Shane McMahon. Shane basically shows up on the Titantron from the lounge saying that, no, I'm not going to come out there, everything to go along with that. Absolutely refuses to him, tells him, it's like, you shouldn't worry about me, you should be worrying about Drew McIntyre, where McIntyre cuts this promo where he's just like, I'm going to make you unrecognizable to your family and everything. I want them to watch and like see what I'm going to do to you. As soon as it gets to the family bit, Roman Reigns walks into the crowd, and this is why they set up that shot, and starts walking the exact same direction you saw from the camera, and he's going to Shane's VIP lounge. The Revival come out. They get beaten down. One of them gets thrown into a women's locker room, or not the women's locker room, but I think a women's bathroom, and then you hear a scream in there, which was a nice touch if that was what was supposed to be added in there. And then he goes into the lounge, and he goes after Shane and Drew, eventually putting Drew through a table and chases Shane back out to the ring. He beats down Shane in the ring and gets a little bit of retribution by giving him a spear. This was very well shot and very well done. This was very thoroughly enjoyable. I thought Monday Night Raw was actually really good this week. So this leads us to the main event of the night, which was Daniel Bryan going up against Seth Rollins. You had Eric Rowan out there, or just Rowan out there as well. And you basically had a very short match right from the get-go. It ends in DQ by Rowan giving Seth Rollins the claw slam, and then the big brawl starts. The New Day comes out, Sami Zayn and Owens come out, the Revival come back out, the Usos run down. I think maybe even Gallows and Anderson was in there as well, I believe, as to go along with it. So basically the entire tag division ran down, and they started brawling. Then right before they cut to commercial break, they say the match is going to be restarted one-on-one. All parties are banned. And when they come back from commercial break, they have the match between Seth Rollins and Daniel Bryan, which I thought was a really good match in the end, with Seth Rollins picking up the victory. The storyline was basically that Rollins had never beaten Daniel Bryan, which he ends out getting his victory here. After the match, he's on the rampway celebrating. He gets laid out with a steel chair by Baron Corbin, and Corbin puts him back in the ring and hits the end of days, and they go off the air. Still no referee. And we don't have a referee through SmackDown, and guess what? We don't have a referee until the night of the pay-per-view. The beginning of SmackDown was which I also thought was a pretty good show as well, overall, with this. It started with the New Day. They came out and cut a promo on Dolph Ziggler. Big E pitches what he called the Freaky Hour, which apparently involves Xavier Woods in a slip and slide and something else. He got interrupted by Dolph Ziggler before he could finish with this one. Dolph Ziggler basically says the same stuff that he said over the last couple of weeks. It should have been me. It should have been me. Kofi does retort with a very good retort towards him as well. And what he was going to do on Sunday to him, but what Xavier was going to do to him next, which led to the match between Dolph Ziggler and Xavier Woods. You had Big E and Kofi out there. Eventually, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn do come out and attack Big E and Kofi. Everybody gets kicked from ringside, and then eventually Dolph does win in what was a really good match, and led it to the point that he beat Xavier. It was a very close match in the end, but he beats Xavier to a point that he can't defend himself, even to where he's having to be held up by the ropes, and then he does the super kick. But it was very close throughout there, very good back and forth between the two of them. Very entertaining match. It's worth watching. You have a bunch of people outside of Baron Corbin's locker room, apparently. So apparently he was on SmackDown interviewing for referees for Sunday. You have Shelton Benjamin and the B team. The B team's talking about is oh, this could be a good opportunity. I know what Seth Rollins has been doing, but this could be a good opportunity to get back into the main areas. Shelton Benjamin's like, dude, he's just using us, and I'm going to try to use him too. Matt Hardy walks out of there and calls Shelton Benjamin Senior Benjamin, and I got a chuckle because of the Broken Universe stuff on that one. Up next, we had a Moment of Bliss segment with it being Bayley as the guest for that basically talk show segment. They do a quick bit with Alexa's coffee, where Bayley is the one that comes out with it because the guy who would normally bring out the coffee did not do it, so Bayley was the one who did, and she takes a couple drinks from it. They have a long back and forth here, and this was actually really good between the two of them. It felt like they were talking about past experiences, and they weren't just talking about past experiences from their first feud. They were talking about stuff from NXT, where Alexa's saying that in NXT she wasn't being welcomed, and she would go to Bayley because she was the nice one, but got shut down by her, and saying that Charlotte was the only one that ever helped her out to go along with that. Bayley even mentioning to the point that it's I only said things that were necessary at the time and wasn't really being too mean towards her, and tries to also play off that maybe Alexa's trying to use Nikki Cross, which got that weird look from Nikki Cross as well. And I thought that a lot of this stuff was really good. And the line that probably cut the most, and this is also probably the reason why it started the brawl. So they do eventually brawl, but this is after Alexa says to Bayley, it's like, you're just a placeholder who peaked in NXT. Ooh, that one had to cut a little close to home on that one, because a lot of people would probably almost agree to a certain area. I've been a Bayley fan and everything, but like based off of how she's been on the main roster, that is almost true on that one. The fans are definitely getting a little bit more behind her. They start brawling. Nikki Cross pulls Bayley off of Alexa, and they kind of have a stare down between Bayley and Nikki Cross, and it's like, okay, I'm done. And Alexa Bliss comes in and blindsides Bayley, knocking her down, which actually got a look from Nikki Cross as well, like, that was kind of cheap. Why'd you do that? Type thing. So it kind of leaves a wondering where they're going with this one. You had a segment with Apollo Crews backstage. By the way, they're finding people. They're finding people this week. You know, people we haven't seen in quite some time, such as Asuka and Kairi Sane. They show up as well. And I'll talk about that segment here in a moment. But Apollo comes up backstage. You have Zelina Vega. She's getting ready and everything. You see Apollo Crews appear. And oddly enough, in a creepy, almost creepy way, but like from right behind, because they have a shot with a mirror and everything. But it was all about Apollo wanting a match with Andrade. And it's like, hey, where's Andrade? I feel like he's ducking me. They play it off as, and I like the little bit there's like, you know, Selena's like, what, are you here to flirt with me? And then Apollo just kind of backs off a little bit. It's like, you're right. Andrade is very close by all the time. Andrade attacks and beats down Apollo. They leave. And then lo and behold, you also have Chad Gable there taking notes on Apollo like he was the week before. You have Heavy Machinery going up against the B team. This was a rather quick match in general, with the Heavy Machinery going over, which you kind of assume that would be the case because Heavy Machinery is going up against Daniel Bryan and Rowan at the pay-per-view for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. So they get a quick victory. And then lo and behold, after the match, Seth Rollins comes out and beats down the B team for, well, basically wanting to be the referees in the match. So they get the chair treatment from before. After this, Shane McMahon arrives at the arena late, as usual, I guess. He was there late. We'll just leave it on that one. He runs into Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, who complain about Kofi and Seth, and what they've been doing is like, they're bad people. It's like, well, they're bad people, then you should do something about that. You'll have a tag match with them, and it'll be 2 out of 3 falls. So they were setting up 2 out of 3 fall matches this week. This does eventually also lead to another Aleister Black promo, which I feel like this is actually coming to an end, and we're going to see who's going to pick the fight with him. This is a novel concept, because most people, when they're debuting, and I know Aleister Black debuted a while ago, but like with a singles run, he's kind of debuting. Generally, they come out there and pick a fight with somebody, but he wants them to pick the fight with him, and implores that person who's going to pick the fight with him that he's going to change their essence in the matter. And it should be interesting to see who that's going to end up being. Maybe it'll be Randy Orton or some. I would hope it would end up being somebody with somebody with a little bit more like name recognition behind it. It's not like somebody who's also debuting, because then somebody has to lose their debut feud with that one. So hopefully it'll be somebody with name recognition that's going to be going after Aleister Black first. Shane McMahon comes out next with Elias and Drew McIntyre. Drew cuts a very good promo on Roman Reigns, which he eventually gets interrupted by The Miz. The Miz shows everything from the night before in slow-mo, which I believe they showed everything what happened the night before as well. Not fast motion, but in normal motion. And Miz is sick and tired of Shane taking up all the airtime. And they make mention to this. They even kind of get a little bit of self-awareness where Shane is like, you know what, let's not make this about me. Let's make this about Drew McIntyre, the guy who's going to be facing Roman Reigns on Sunday. They do that in there. Miz even goes to the aspect of saying this was his fault that Shane is doing having this ego trip and saying he's the best in the world, and that it's his responsibility to take out Shane. He's going to take it upon himself to be the one that does it. Which will be interesting to see if that will even be the case in some way, shape, or form. Shane is like, well, okay, you can have a tag match, or you can have a match, and it was like, Miz was thinking it was like, oh, it's going to be a handicap match with Drew and Elias. Is like, no, it's going to be a tag match, but you have 10 seconds to find your partner. Lo and behold, who shows up? It's R-Truth. It's R-Truth. He comes out from underneath the ring, and it's like, and you just got Miz going like, Truth? Well, the Awesome Truth is back together. There we go. And they make it an elimination match. So now we're just throwing the elimination matches out there. 2 out of 3 falls. Wherever and however we feel right now, apparently. With that one. With that match, before the match starts, they have a quick segment backstage. And I actually liked one other little bit that they had with this one. It's like, Shane was like, well, okay, I didn't see that one coming, so... and that's where they make the elimination match. Up next, right before they had that match, it was the Iconics backstage. They were talking with, I forget who they were talking with at the time. It wasn't the Revival. They weren't there. But they were talking with another tag team, and as they walk by, they eventually run into Kairi Sane, Paige, and Asuka. Guess who they found this week? About time. And Paige cuts a promo on both of them, and I liked how Kairi was even doing a little bit that she had with the telescope, so she's eyeing her treasure at this point, which will be those women's tag team titles. And they made mention to a match that is going to be happening in Tokyo next week, and if the Iconics lose that match to Kairi Sane and Asuka, then Kairi Sane and Asuka are going to get tag title matches. And then at the end they all do the Iconic thing, and I thought it was kind of funny. So this leads to that elimination match with The Miz and R-Truth going up against Drew McIntyre and Elias. R-Truth gets eliminated rather quickly and eventually gets chased, and this starts the 24/7 stuff as the match is still going on. And I love how Shelton Benjamin is like, apparently the only way to get the title is to go run and take it. So he thought he was the one actually winning it because he just picks it up and does a couple laps around the ring. The referee's like, no, you got to pin or make R-Truth submit to win the title. Oh, and then R-Truth and he takes away from Shelton, and then that gives R-Truth a chance to grab his title and run. And he runs away, and they continue on with the match. The 24/7 stuff has been really good. I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a moment as well. The 24/7 stuff has been really good. Just like little spots of good, like this is good humor that they've been running with, and I thought it's been pretty good. The match afterwards with finishing off with Drew and with McIntyre and Elias going up and finishing off the Miz does happen rather quickly. McIntyre wants to just keep doing claymores, the claymore kick to the Miz at the end of the match. He wins the match with the claymore and does 2 more afterwards to go along with it. Decent enough match, kind of got the point across with that one as well. To go along with it, and yeah, not bad. Ember Moon is backstage trying to find Mandy Rose and Sonya, which she runs into Carmella's like, have you seen them? No, but tell them if you do find them that we have unfinished business, as she's trying to find Truth. And she walks literally 4 steps, and they had to be in her line of sight to begin with. But she runs into Mandy and Sonya. They have a back and forth. And Sonya and Mandy are going like, we can eat all these donuts and still be like this, yeah, type bits. They do the most disingenuous bit of apologies for breaking Ember's Nintendo Switch last week. Is like, we're just trying to give you something other to do than video games and books. And she's like, and that, well, not that actual line, but eventually the whole bit of what they've been doing with her forces her to knock the donuts up in the air. She attacks and fights them. They get broke and eventually gets broken up. And so that's leading to that feud, and it'll probably lead to some kind of tag match as well, with Carmella being a part of that. Up next, before the main event, you have R-Truth leaving the arena, trying to find his Uber and Carmella. And you have somebody just out there dressed up as Carmella. As he's walking up to the car, a referee comes out. It's like, "Are you my Uber driver?" "No." And then they turn around. The person who's in the Carmella outfit is Drake Maverick. He kind of fights it off a little bit. R-Truth fights him off, and then it goes to get into the car. But Drake Maverick rolls him up, puts his feet up on the car for extra leverage, and gets the pin, gets the 24/7 title, and jacks the referee's car, the rental car, and drives off. He was back for 205 Live, though. But I wanted to talk about this a little bit more because I've been enjoying the 24/7 stuff. Like I said, it's been the right little amount of chaos that's been put into these particular segments. And everything, and it even goes, and I like the aspect of what they're doing with either social media side or with the YouTube side, because guess what? R-Truth is 24/7 champion again, because he crashed Drake Maverick's wedding and pinned him after the vows. I'm certain the way they did this is that they filmed it after the actual wedding to go along with it, like they did the real wedding and then they did this. But since the person who is marrying Drake Maverick in real life is also a wrestler who is outside of WWE in the independent side, her name is Renee Michelle, which she was actually in the Mae Young Classic going up against Candice LeRae, I think, in the first round. Was even playing off as like, "I can't believe how obsessed he is, I want a divorce," type thing. So they're playing that off on there. And guess what? I think as of yesterday, or as of today, when I looked at it before filming this, and this is on a Saturday, that segment on YouTube, which also the playing bit got high views as well, but the wedding segment got over 3 million views on the YouTube page. So the 24/7 stuff is working. It's interesting, and they can play this off with like YouTube side, Twitter, everything to go along with it. And it's been fun. Yes, the title looks like garbage, but the segments have been pure gold so far. Obviously, they haven't done it so much to the point that they've like made it that's overstayed its welcome, which I'm certain it will at some point in time. But they've been keeping it fresh, and they've been doing different little bits with the social media side to kind of make it work and give it kind of like a unique feel and a unique look to it. So this led to the main event of the night, which was Kofi Kingston and Seth Rollins going up against Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, and by the way, this is 2 out of 3 falls, and by the way, the first fall happened in with about 5 seconds. Trouble in Paradise to Sami Zayn, and that first fall was done. What was the point of the 2 out of 3 falls? Yeah. There is more back and forth. They do have a decent match in the end for the second fall, but it does lead to Seth Rollins getting the stomp on Kevin Owens, and it was another 2-0. SmackDown overall, I thought it was a pretty decent show. Honestly, both shows I thought were pretty decent this week, and I thought it was a lot of fun. Call a spade when the shows have been bad. We've been kind of saying it, but when the shows have been, when the shows are good, you got to make mention to it as well. And this week was good. Hopefully they can keep that up. So before I go into the Impact stuff, because I do Impact co-streaming and live reactions over on my Twitch page on a Friday basis, because they do allow us to do co-streaming with the Twitch stuff with Impact Wrestling. And so I do that over on my Twitch page. So I do watch Impact on a weekly basis. But before we do that, we're going to get into Stomping Grounds predictions. So let's start off with the Cruiserweight title match, which is going to be Tony Nese going up against Kira Tozawa and going up against Drew Gulak. A lot of this has obviously been happening on 205 Live. I'm not necessarily watching it on a weekly basis, but based off of the story that I've been seeing and where they've been going recently, a title change might be necessary here. And I feel like a lot of people feel like this show is going to be not noteworthy. And I think WWE is going to try to go out of their way to make it noteworthy in the end of the night. This won't obviously do that, but I do feel like we're going to get a new cruiserweight champion here. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why maybe they made it a triple threat. And I feel like Drew Gulak is going to pick up the victory here and pick up the cruiserweight title in this match. Up next is going to be Daniel Bryan and Rowan going up against Heavy Machinery for the SmackDown Live Tag Team titles. I think this is not a spot that they need to be taking those tag titles off of Daniel Bryan and Rowan. And like Heavy Machinery has only been around for a few months. I don't think it's necessarily time to take those titles off of them. So I'm going to be predicting Daniel Bryan and Rowan to keep the tag team titles. Up next will be Xavier Woods and Big E going up against Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn in a normal tag match. And with everything that they've been doing with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, it does scream that potential of Big E and Xavier winning. Sorry. This particular one. But I think Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn are going to get the victory here. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn based off of the fact that they've been losing a lot right now. And maybe it's time for them to pick up a victory. Up next, we have Samoa Joe going up against Ricochet. This was made on Monday night. Based off of the math and everything, I don't feel like Ricochet's picking up this title quite yet. So I'm going to go with Samoa Joe picking up the victory because Ricochet did kind of get the upper hand in the end over on Samoa Joe on Monday Night Raw. So I'm going to have Samoa Joe picking up the victory for this particular match. Up next, we have Roman Reigns going up against Drew McIntyre. I feel like a lot of people feel Roman's winning this match. I don't. And I have heard a few other people make predictions that Drew McIntyre is going to win. I'm also going to go with that as well. I feel like Drew McIntyre wins this one because they can continue on stuff with Shane and Roman and everything that go along with that. And Roman doesn't necessarily need to pick up another victory against Drew at this time, but it would be... I feel like it is a spot where, you know, having him have back-to-back losses against Shane and Drew, even though I didn't really watch any of the Super Showdown stuff, so I only know the results. But I think Drew helped Shane pick up the victory on that one. But I can see Drew actually picking up the victory here and then continuing on with maybe some kind of handicap match or something down the line here for Roman with this whole Shane thing as well. Up next, the SmackDown Live Women's title is on the line. It is Bayley going up against Alexa Bliss. This is an intriguing one because in the terms of build, this has actually been done really well this time compared to the first time that we had Alexa Bliss and Bayley back in 2017. Let's not be reminded of that segment ever again. That is the last that we will ever speak of that segment that I'm not going to make mention to the name of. But based off of where they're going here, it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do. Are they going to play it off as Alexa Bliss has only been manipulating Nikki Cross to get her on her side so she can help her beat Bayley? Or does it turn out that that Alexa Bliss was right about Bayley the entire time and she does not like her fans in any way, shape, or form, and she's the one that's actually going to turn heel here, and she's not who she says she is? I think Bayley's going to win this one. As much as I know they don't ever put Bayley over when it comes to the Alexa Bliss stuff, I feel like this is going to be the one time that they do it. Though I would not be shocked if they have Alexa Bliss pick up the victory here. I know she's a Raw person and it's a SmackDown title, but, you know, the brand split's pretty much gone. So, whatever on that one. But I am going to pick Bayley to pick up the victory here. Like I said, I don't necessarily feel like the story that they're telling is that Alexa Bliss has been right about Bayley and she's the one that's actually turning, where I think it's probably going to be something with Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross for something to go down the line here. And we'll see how that one ends up playing out, but I'm going to go with Bayley picking up the victory here. Up next is going to be Becky Lynch going up against Lacey Evans for the Raw Women's title. Yeah. Becky just probably should win this one. I wouldn't be shocked if they gave it to Lacey Evans, but I don't feel like it's time to necessarily take both those belts off of Becky Lynch. I think it's a little too soon from WrestleMania to necessarily do so. So I'm going to go with Becky Lynch on this one. Based off, and I know the math doesn't necessarily play that off based on the factor that that Becky Lynch got the one up on Lacey Evans at the end of the stuff on Monday Night Raw, but I feel like Becky's going to go over here and she's going to keep that Raw Women's title for a little bit longer. Up next, we have Kofi Kingston going up against Dolph Ziggler for the WWE title in a cage match. Kofi Kingston's winning. Do I really need to say more? I don't see them putting that on Dolph. It makes no sense to put it on Dolph. With all the starts and stops and everything to go along with it, even if it would hurt everything even to do it for a week at this point in time with Dolph Ziggler. Kofi keeps this title and he's going to move on to his next challenger. In that one. Up next is what will be probably the main event of the night. It will be Seth Rollins going up against Baron Corbin for the Universal title. Like I said, I feel like they're going to have to do something to try to make this memorable in some way, shape, or form. I don't think it's going to be the referee that makes this memorable, but I do think the result will in some way, shape, or form. I don't think it's going to, I think they're going to play it off as like, yeah, it's not going to be Paul Heyman or Brock Lesnar. It's not going to be it's not going to be like any superstar. It's going to be something we haven't seen yet. And I've been thinking about it, and I'm probably overthinking this as well. But who's been the one person in the entire area that's actually been on Baron Corbin's side the entire time? Like, Lashley's never really been on his side. It was almost like a convenience thing for teaming up. Same with Drew. And he has this match with Roman anyway. The whole thing with Braun being in there as well for a period of time. But who's been that one person who's always been on the side of Baron Corbin? Corey Graves. I know he had to retire from wrestling because of concussions, but I imagine he would be able to get cleared for some referee duty in some way, shape, or form to go along with that. Corey Graves on commentary has always been on Baron Corbin's side the entire time. He's the one person to do it, to be there on that one. And it makes actual sense to do it. In that aspect, it's one person that maybe Seth Rollins wouldn't be able to get to before the match, because he wouldn't reveal it or anything to go along with that. Or they could go another route with this as well. But oddly enough, I'm going to go with Corey Graves being the referee, and I'm also picking Baron Corbin to win the Universal title. That's right. I'm not one of those who thinks he has go-away heat or anything like that one. I think Baron Corbin has actually been a very effective heel. And I do enjoy Baron Corbin's work. And I feel like they're going to put that Universal title on him, even for a short period of time. And and like I said, I feel like they're going to try to do something to make this memorable. I know it would piss off a lot of people, but it would make it memorable. Baron Corbin walked out with the Universal title. I'm going to go with Baron Corbin. I may be wrong. They may go like, yeah, whatever. We'll just next show type thing. And Seth just wins. But to have a little bit of fun with these predictions, I'm going to go with Baron Corbin on this one. And we'll see what ends out happening. It'll also be interesting to see what happens with the show as well. Like I said, there's not a lot of hype going into this. Everything with the ticket sales and everything to go along with that has not been good. It's been rumored that they've tarped off the entire non-hard camera side to go along with that in the Tacoma Dome. And some of the stuff on the hard camera side has not really sold well. When I took a look earlier today, it looks like they dropped prices on all the stuff, on all of the different seats, even the padded seated areas. And some more of those tickets have moved from that time frame. But it doesn't look like a very... just the hype about this show doesn't resonate something special. And it'll be interesting to see how it comes out. There is a chance I may do live reactions. I get home from work right around close to the time that the pre-show starts. I may be able to do a live reaction show to the pay-per-view tomorrow night. I don't know yet. We'll see how that one ends up playing out, but I will be doing a review later, whether it be Monday or Sunday night. Sorry, I have a cough. I've had a cough for like the last few weeks with those ones. So, yeah, should be an interesting show. Now, I may mention to this beforehand. I wanted to go ahead and talk about this as well because I do watch Impact Wrestling every Friday. I do the co-stream, like I may mention before, on Twitch. On my end, so you can watch the show, and I also do live reactions to go along with it. Of course, Impact has their own Twitch channel as well, so tune in for that. They do show classics and obviously the new Impact show, the weekly Impact as well. A little bit of news on that one. Scarlett Bordeaux did get released from Impact Wrestling. Also, I wanted to talk a little bit about this as well because of the stuff that happened in AAA. With the incident with a fan. This falls under the aspect, and I guess to give it full context, because that AAA show also had a very scary moment with Aerostar where he did a dive off of the scaffolding and kind of missed being caught and landed very badly on the ground. A very scary little moment. But also another moment here that happened with Scarlett Bordeaux was that she was doing a 6-woman tag match, and everything went to the outside of the ring. As she's kind of walking to get back into the ring, she gets grabbed by a fan by the arm who starts trying to like hug and grab and kind of grope her. One of the other competitors kind of pulls her away real quick. And I'm not going to say this because it was a man trying to grab a woman and basically grope her on that one. I'm not going to say that just because of that, but because that's, first of all, wrong to begin with. That's wrong to begin with there. But it's an aspect of the fans touching the wrestlers without their consent. And when they are in the barricade area where they're doing the matches, you do not touch the wrestlers. Period. Male or female. You should not, as a fan, you should not be touching them. Period. Unless they allow it. And usually like what you see is like a pat on the shoulder or something like that. You don't get anything where you're trying to grab them and feel them up or anything to go along with that. And that happened to Scarlett Bordeaux. That obviously started a bunch of controversy to go along with it. Another thing that happened with Scarlett as well was that she did get her release from Impact Wrestling. She asked for it and she was granted that one. So it looks like we may be seeing her a little bit more around independent wrestling. I did watch some stuff that she had with Impact, and she's not bad. She's actually quite good in the ring to go along with it. She does have a very seductive character on that one, but the whole thing that happened with her in AAA is ridiculous. I know different culture, different area, but it's still ridiculous, and everybody even makes mention around everywhere. It's like, you shouldn't be touching the wrestlers. First of all, if you do touch them, it practically gives them free reign to beat the crap out of you. And we've seen that happen plenty of times. Secondly, just like, and this is probably even more important than the factor of not touching the wrestlers, what that guy did to her was, it was wrong. It was wrong. It was like, she could probably press charges on this guy. I know it's maybe different laws down in AAA because it was a Mexican show on that one, but technically she, like, based off of everything here, she would probably be able to press some kind of charges, whether it be assault or something like that, to go along with it. But I don't think they're doing anything to the fan at this point in time. I think they're kind of just leaving it be for the moment. But yeah, it's one of those things like, don't touch the wrestlers, male or female, and it's not right. It's not right at all. Especially when they're in the middle of the match. You don't know what mode they're going to be in. They could be in defensive mode. It's like, hey, that's one of my opponents. I need a punch at that point in time to go along with it. So, yeah, it's one of those things. You don't touch them unless they unless it's like consent. And like I said, usually what you see most people do is like a shoulder pad or anything. You don't grab them and bring them to you or anything. That's just, it's not cool. Not cool. But I said something with Impact Wrestling was one of the most disturbing things that I've seen in wrestling ever. And it wasn't the Scarlet Bordeaux thing. Impact Wrestling, actually, I've been enjoying it. And they went full Lucha Underground this week with some of their stuff. They had Jake Christ of OVE facing Tessa Blanchard, and what was a very, I would say, a very good match. Tessa Blanchard went over in that match. I thought it was pretty good with that one. You had TJP's re-debut on Impact Wrestling, where he came back. He faced Ace Austin and gave him his first loss since coming into Impact Wrestling. Moose went up against Tommy Dreamer, with Moose picking up the victory in that one, and what was a pretty decent match. RVD making the save afterwards, because Moose is going to be having a thing with RVD. He was trying to beat up Tommy Dreamer after the match. RVD made the save. You had Taya Valkyrie going up against Su Yung. That ended in DQ, a very weird finish where like Su Yung kind of had the advantage, but Havoc just like hits Taya Valkyrie and causes the DQ for no reason thing inside of there. And the match itself was pretty decent. It was just a very wonky finish. Earlier in the night, you had Taya go up to Rosemary, and she was kind of like playing off the whole and Rosemary's been playing off the whole demon thing, where Taya's trying to, she's trying to get a little bit of help against both of them, and then they know, and she knows they're going after that. It's like, so Rosemary and Taya don't like each other, but it's a convenience thing. The enemy of my enemy is my friend thing on that one to go along with it. I like the little bit where it's like, it's where Rosemary says, it's like, I'll have to consult the cards. And it's like, Taya's all confused. It's like, oh, your speak. My people will call your people. Bye. And eventually, after the match, Rosemary does make the save. And James Mitchell ends out announcing a Monsters Ball match for Slammiversary. So it's going to be all four of them. It's going to be Su Yung, Jessica Havoc, Taya Valkyrie, and Rosemary for the Knockouts title in a Monsters Ball match. And I think they have a tag match next week with Taya teaming up with Rosemary to go up against Su Yung and Havoc. The main event of the night saw Michael Elgin, who is now in Impact Wrestling, going up against Johnny Impact, going up against Rich Swann. I thought this was a pretty good match as well, with Rich Swann picking up the victory over Johnny Impact in this triple threat, and was able to chase off Michael Elgin afterwards as well, because Michael Elgin's kind of been on a rampage trying to cut himself ahead of the line. So Rich Swann tries to fight him off, and lo and behold, Brian Cage comes back, and you have the stare down between him and Michael Elgin. It looks like Brian Cage is going to be back for Slammiversary for that world title match. It's also a nice little storyline tidbit that Rich Swann picked up a victory over Johnny Impact, and they have a X Division title match at Slammiversary as well. And I'll be seeing if I'm going to be buying Slammiversary in some way, shape, or form. And I may do a review on that as well. I've been enjoying Impact. Now, like I said, all the stuff that I've kind of said, nothing really disturbing at all. So right after the Tessa Blanchard Jake Christ match, you had Eddie Edwards going up against Fulton, from Madman Fulton from OVE. And the match was going kind of normal, very like fast-paced, hard-hitting, a pretty good match going on. Killer Cross comes up on the Tron, and he's cutting, like, he's always been very dark with his promos and everything. And this was no different. Like I said, they went full Lucha Underground this week on this. And he had captured the Sandman after beating him from the week before, and he's taunting Eddie Edwards with it. But he has a mask over, he has like a hood over Sandman's face. And lo and behold, he starts waterboarding Sandman. It like I said, it was one of the worst, well, not one of the worst, but one of the most disturbing things I've seen in wrestling. Because if you've known what waterboarding is, it's a torture mechanism to get people to try to give information. And he's just using this here as not as a thing to try to get information, but to torture Eddie Edwards, who runs to the back, basically forgets the match, or he ends up losing the match, and then runs to the back. And this is all being played off of the whole Kenny 2.0 thing that Sandman gave to Eddie Edwards. By the way, Eddie Edwards has kind of gone mad, and he talks with a kendo stick, calls him Kenny. And Killer Cross had broken one, basically killing Kenny. And then Sandman gave Eddie Edwards a new one. So you get cut to a backstage bit where, you know, we have Eddie Edwards looking for Sandman and Killer Cross. He runs up to Alicia Edwards, his wife. She's trying to plead with him, it's a trap. Don't do this. Don't do this. He's trying to bait you into doing this. And Eddie's not having any of it. He eventually finds the area that Sandman was in, pulls the hood, wasn't Sandman there, and he comes out, and Killer Cross attacks him. And then Eddie Edwards turns the tide and starts viciously beating him down in the match. Or not in the match, but backstage, to the point that Alicia doesn't walk back up, but runs back up, is like, Eddie, this is not you. You need to stop this. No more. And then you look at Killer Cross, he spits up blood. He's like, more. And then Eddie Edwards is like, you don't know me. And he's snapped completely and goes down. And afterwards, like, he starts viciously attacking, I guess biting Killer Cross. I guess they killed him off in this one. And when Eddie Edwards comes back up, his mouth is just covered with blood. Like I said, they went full Lucha Underground. Honestly, I think they went more disturbing than what Lucha Underground had really ever done in this one. This was by far one of the most disturbing things I've seen on a wrestling show, period. Not the most. Katie Vick angle still is the one, but this is definitely up there and definitely in the recent side to go along with it. Very disturbing angle, and one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen. And that's how we're actually ending the show, because that was everything I had this week. I'm looking to bring NXT back into the fold next week. I haven't watched it yet this week, so I'm going to make sure to watch it, at least keep up storyline wise. And then we'll try to bring it back into the review for next week. We will be back next week with another episode of GodSaw's Turnbuckle. I thank everybody for watching, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Take care.